Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into something that can make or break a company: workplace culture. It's one of those things we all know when it feels broken or toxic, right? But getting it right, man, that can feel impossible. Well, in the next few minutes, we're going to lay out a clear blueprint for how to actually fix it. And to really get us started, I want to kick things off with this quote from James Humes. This just hits the nail on the head. Because as you're about to see, a great culture isn't about free snacks or ping pong tables. Nope. It's built on something way more fundamental: clear, powerful communication. And it all starts with leadership. Do any of these words feel a little familiar? For so many companies, this is the reality. You've got stagnation, not because the strategy is bad, but because the teams just aren't clicking. You have these huge generational gaps that lead to constant miscommunication. And the result? People just don't feel like they belong anymore. The culture becomes nothing more than a few words printed on a poster in the hallway. So that brings us to the big question, right? This isn't just about feelings or office vibes. All of this friction, all this disconnect, it has a real tangible cost. So what's the actual price a company pays when its culture is broken? Well, the research from McKinsey is just crystal clear on this. Get this. Companies with effective internal communication are a staggering 20 to 25% more productive. That is not a small number. That's a massive competitive advantage. It really proves that fixing your culture isn't some fluffy, nice-to-have HR project. It's a direct line to better business results. Period. Okay, so we know the problem is real and the cost is high. How on earth do we fix it? It can feel like this huge, tangled mess. But the good news is there's a framework. There's a blueprint for turning all that noise and static into a perfectly tuned three-part harmony. And here it is. The solution really boils down to three core pillars that build on each other. First, you have to create genuine connections between your people. Then, you have to give them a system, an environment that's aligned, where doing the right thing is the easy thing. And when you get those two things right, that's when you create a living culture. That's when your values jump off the page and into everyday actions. Getting these three in sync is everything. So let's start with the foundation, the very bedrock of this whole structure: the people, the human element. It's all about connecting your teams. Because let's be honest, without a solid base of trust and collaboration, no fancy system or brilliant strategy is ever going to work. Now, building real connection, it's not about forcing everyone to do trust falls or escape rooms. It's about building specific skills and mindsets. We're talking about practical, in-the-moment collaboration, building an agile mindset so people can roll with the punches, and developing personal mindfulness and resilience to handle the pressure. These are the real building blocks of a truly connected team. I know, neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, sounds super technical, right? But in a business setting, it's actually a really practical tool for building that personal resilience. All it is a way to better understand our own emotional triggers and those of our colleagues. When you master this, you can navigate stress and tricky workplace dynamics so much more effectively. It's a game changer. Okay, but even if you have the most amazing connected people in the world, it's not enough if the system they're working in is actively working against them. And that brings us to our second pillar: aligning the systems. This is all about creating an environment where people are actually set up to succeed. And the difference here is just night and day. Traditional systems, they often just measure raw output. They have those dreaded annual reviews that feel more punitive than helpful. But in an aligned system, KPIs actually reflect your cultural values. Performance isn't just about what you did, but how you did it. And feedback, it shifts from a scary once-a-year meeting to continuous, supportive coaching. So what's the whole point of this? The end goal is to create total continuity. An aligned system closes that giant gap between the mission statement hanging in the boardroom and what your employees are actually doing day in and day out. It makes sure those big, inspiring ideas are reflected in thousands of tiny, everyday actions. And that brings us to the final pillar, the one that ties it all together. Because when you have connected people working within an aligned system, you can finally create a living culture. This is where culture stops being a slogan and starts being the actual heartbeat of the organization. And this doesn't happen by accident. It's not magic. It's a deliberate process. You got to start with an honest culture audit to see where you really stand. Then, leadership absolutely has to walk the talk. From there, you empower your internal champions, your change agents, to spread the message. And you reinforce it all with campaigns and stories that bring your values to life. And that first step, the culture audit, is so incredibly important because it shows you the gap between what you say you are and what you actually are. For example, a company might say its number one value is innovation, but an honest audit might reveal that, in reality, everyone is terrified of failure. You can't possibly fix a problem until you're willing to see it clearly. All right, as we pull this all together, we've seen the problem of disconnect, and we've walked through the three-part solution. So now the question really turns from the general to the specific. It turns to you. It turns to your organization. If there is one single thing to take away from our time today, it's this. People, systems, and culture. They are not separate projects you can tackle one by one. They are a single interconnected engine. When one part is out of whack, the whole engine sputters and stalls. But when they all work together in harmony, that's when you create powerful, unstoppable growth. And that leaves us with one final thought. Just take a second and think about your own workplace. Are your people, your systems, and your culture all playing in harmony, driving everyone forward together? Or are they just making noise? The answer to that question is your first step toward building a workplace that doesn't just survive, but truly thrives.